You're watching memorable entertainment television. MeTV Tri-State.
Broke the story on local homestead tax credit fiasco. Exposed the Evansville Redevelopment Commission excessive spending habits.
Your community watchdog. CityCountyObserver.com is your online community newspaper dedicated to the progress of Evansville and Vanderburgh County. We're a nonpartisan publication providing insight into political issues and events that shape our community. We are a watchdog for you, the citizen. Check us out online, city-countyobserver.com. That's city-countyobserver.com.
Tri-State Voices, an open discussion with area leaders on issues affecting communities throughout the Tri-State. Now, here's your host, Mike Woods.
Good morning. Welcome to Tri-State Voices. Every week, Tri-State Voices interviews different community leaders from around the Tri-State to talk to subjects that are important to all of us. Tri-State Voices is jointly sponsored by the City County Observer, WTSN, and my office, Woods & Woods. Today we're honored to have the Vice President of the Evansville City Council, Stephanie Brinkerhoff-Riley. Stephanie's been involved in Evansville politics for many, many years, and she's been a leader of the Evansville City Council, particularly so a few years ago where there was a deal, she'll tell you more about it, called Earth Care. It turned out there was probably going to be a swindle. Stephanie did her research, exposed them for what they were, and let everybody know that it was a bad deal. Since then, she's been a real leader on the City Council. Stephanie, you know, when recently you recorded the exit interview from the audit, and of course everybody's pretty familiar about that. And when people meet you, I'm sort of reminded of what Abraham Lincoln said when he met Harriet Beecher Stowe. Of course, she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, and when Lincoln met Harriet Beecher Stowe, he said, "So you're the little lady that started this big war?" What have you done to get everybody so excited?
Well, initially, I recorded the exit conference simply to take notes. I just wanted to document the results. And at the time, I had no intention of ever using it, and if you listen to the audio, you wouldn't have any reason to believe that you'd need to. I mean, my understanding of an exit conference is that it's a courtesy to the municipality. You know, the audit itself is an interactive process, whereas the State Board of Accounts goes through accounts. They are able to show where they disagree and to suggest new numbers or that the numbers be changed. And so throughout the 2012 audit, the State Board of Accounts did that. So as they audited and they found where a particular number should be something else, they do independently, but as they are to be independent, but as they need information, you know, they can make suggestions, and in the case of 2012, they did. So through that interactive process, the State Board of Accounts, I think, does the best they can to help you through the process. So at the point of the exit conference, they are there to, as a courtesy, to let you know the results before they are released to the public. You can then ask questions, and then you have 10 days to submit some written comments. You know, like although 2011 audit, you know, there were a finding, and then in that document were the city's written comments. They have the ability to respond in writing and have that included in the report that's released to the public. I really thought I was just documenting the 2012 audit. I had no idea that in discussing the 2012 audit, it would become clear that on that day, you know, March 12, 2014, that the city was not able to reconcile their bank statements on a monthly basis, which is required by Indiana law. And they also, at that time, could not balance a payroll account that hadn't been balanced since December 31st of 2010. In keeping the recording, it was really just not only to now cross-reference the 2012 audit, because it's very clear in that room that they are done, but also just when that audit was released, have a conversation about the current inability to reconcile the bank statements, you know, with the State Board of Accounts having just been through and us not able to reconcile the payroll account. I don't, and in that room there was no solution. You know, at one point the auditor said, well, you know, when you get it reconciled, you know, because at the point we get it reconciled, we will have an idea as to whether the variance, you know, this extra money that we have in the bank that we don't reflect in our balances, we don't really know that it's extra money. It isn't, and I'm not trying to say that it's not enough to cover what ultimately the variance is, but until we reconcile the payroll account, we don't really know if that's extra money. Once we do get it reconciled, then after a period of time, if nothing shows up that would alter those balances, then that extra money can just be moved into the general fund. And at that point, we could potentially get back to balancing our books to the penny, as we were able to do under prior administrations.
Well, why was the State Board of Accounts going over the Evansville books in the first place?
Well, we are required on an annual basis to be audited. I mean, one of the basic functions of government is to keep track of the people's money. And that's what the State Board of Accounts does. I mean, they are an independent auditing agency that verifies that we are able to manage our funds pursuant to what the Indiana law requires, which is transparency in those transactions.
Okay, but they're still going back to the 2012 numbers.
That's correct. And I think even though in 2012 we were not able to get it right, had we been able to reconcile all the accounts and deal with the, you know, the errors in the payroll account itself, we could have gotten a better audit for 2012. And just like as we look forward to having to go through the audit process for 2013, just because, you know, if we haven't balanced the accounts on March 12th of 2014, that means obviously that at no point in 2013 were we able to balance the accounts either. But that doesn't mean that we are necessarily doomed to an audit that isn't clean for 2013. If we can finally reconcile, use the software we've installed, reconcile the accounts and start complying, then we could get a better audit than what it appears that we're destined for, or at least as of March 12th of 2014.
Well, you're supposed to release the audit about 10 days after the exit interview, and that was March the 12th. And so that would have been about 2 months ago. That thing should have been released. I mean, who's holding up that audit?
Yeah, that I don't know. I mean, what I've learned...
And nobody seems to know. I've asked that question a bunch, and nobody seems to know.
No, what I understand has happened, though, is that there's been a second exit conference that's been conducted that neither I nor the finance chairman were aware of or invited to. And so now I have no idea what will be claimed to be the final report. And that's the very problem with the current statute, because another exit conference has occurred, and it again, as a courtesy to the administration, should be an announcement as to that audit report, and there's no record of it. So there's no record now of why there would be a need for a new exit conference. What was discussed in that exit conference? Why would that audit change from the prior exit conference? I think it's very unusual for a second exit conference to occur because when the first one happens, the auditors are done. You know, it does occasionally happen that there can be something that's brought up that could change the actual report that is released to the public, but that would not seem to be possibly be that all of a sudden the city of Evansville can reconcile its payroll account.
Of course, we don't know because they've not released the first report, even though you've got to see it, and they didn't invite you or the finance chair apparently to the second exit conference. If they release another report that's different from the first report, will anybody be able to compare those two reports?
Well, all we'll have is the audio of the first exit conference to compare to the actual report that is released, and that will at least show us where the changes were made and give us the ability to demand to see why.
Okay. You know, it seems like whenever we talk to somebody on this show about Evansville city finances, a lot of them have expressed a lot of concerns. On this past year, if I remember right, the police department budget was cut about $450,000. And also they pushed off a bunch of comp time from 2013 to 2014. We're obviously halfway through 2014 now. We've got, I think, John Friend, when he was on here, he said you got 88 police cars that are over 100,000 miles, which is a lot for a police car, because obviously they're all city miles, a lot of idle time and that sort of thing. So, I mean, and where are we going with this? You know, I don't think we can do to the police department in the next budget what we did to them in the last budget, can we?
No, I don't think we can, but, you know, the reality is that within the city limits of Evansville, there are rather large areas that aren't, you know, that the property values are stagnant or they actually are decreasing. And so we have an issue of revenue in terms of property tax receipts, you know, so we've got a lot of property that doesn't increase at the same rate nationally. And even if it did, you know, we have looming property tax caps that will, you know, we have less revenue. You know, the river boat funds are not what they used to be, in the sense that they're, you know, we're getting less, and it's projected from Tropicana that we will continue. It makes, you know, that's not really a function of something Evansville is doing wrong in terms of the river boat. That's more of an issue of the land-based gambling and the need to, you know, to move forward with that in terms of the ability to maintain the revenue. But ultimately, you know, the med school is a nice little pocket of the potential for an increase in property values and increased revenue, but that would, you know, that would remain in the TIF. You know, you get into the general fund, and we don't, looking forward, have increased revenue on the horizon. So we have to do more with less. And I think what you see is that people don't like to spend money on things that aren't sexy or that catch the attention of the public. You know, every administration wants a project, you know, like Roberts Park. I mean, I would love to have a Roberts Park. I live right down the street from there. But had we agreed to the $1.5 million that the administration wanted in the 2014 budget, you know, what would have happened then when we hit our shortfall, you know, in terms of reducing, you know, the police? I mean, this issue of what do we want and what do we need? And I firmly believe that if we'll focus on what we actually need, which is investment in the infrastructure, you know, the roads, removal of dilapidated housing, paving, curbs, sidewalks, underground, what we need to do with our water and our sewer infrastructure. You know, if we will focus on taking care of what we have, I believe that kind of investment is a bottom-up investment that does trigger economic development, the small businesses that most of our economy is based on. I mean, I think this idea that we're going to attract a Toyota, you know, that's fantastic, but that's not typically what drives economic development. It's not hosting, you know, these wonderful established companies to come into your town. That is a small part of what we do, but fundamentally investing in our people for their own economic development, for the development of more small businesses. There's certainly no shame in that, but we need to invest in our people as well as our infrastructure, which it means that Roberts Park needs to wait. And we need to just make sure that the parks we have work more efficiently. I mean, there's things we can do to improve the efficiency of the Parks Department. When I say that, I don't mean reducing their budget. I mean, they're a taxing district in and of themselves, but it does mean that we every park doesn't have to be an island amongst itself. It doesn't have to address every possible community interest. You know, we have parks that have playgrounds, parks that have horseshoes, you know, parks that potentially you just have a cookout in, but the key to that is the walkability and the connectivity of the parks we focus on, and then how we let the public know, which is getting back to that brochure. I mean, if you've moved to Evansville in the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, you've never seen the parks brochure that used to come out and tell you everything about the recreational opportunities. We're going to get back to that.
You know, you mentioned about the problem with the casino and the declining revenue. There was a casino outside Cincinnati, and their revenue went from about $35 million per month to $17 million a month when one other casino opened up. There's been a lot of talk in Kentucky for years about the racinos, where over at Ellis Park or something, they'd add a lot of gambling over there. And if that happened, and Evansville didn't get the land-based casino going here, our revenue would just plummet. And of course, the governor's saying he's not going to have any part of that. So it seems like on Casino Astar, those monies are going to continue to go down, and at some point, probably going to go down a lot.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, that's also part of getting in at the ground floor. I mean, when the riverboat came in, it was the market was not nearly as crowded, and so but we got addicted to the revenue. I mean, it was initially funds that were supposed to be limited to capital improvements, and then it became the capital fund, and eventually it now is, we pay half of the arena payment, I think, out of riverboat funds. Now, once the food and beverage is freed up from paying off the center, it will, I think, then replace the riverboat funds that are used on the arena. But then the riverboat just, actually, I think it stays. But anyway, it's just 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Even when we free up that riverboat funds, because of the increased borrowing in the TIF, and because it stays as a second layer before you actually have to reach into county option income tax. All we're doing is moving that money around, so even when it stops going to the arena, it'll continue to help pay the bonds related to the TIF. So,
with regard to the TIF money, we just spent around $50 million on the med school. We are in the process of spending it. Did we spend more than we had to land that med school?
I think that's a hindsight question. I mean, with it being a blind bid, I think that our bid was comparable, but then what we have to do to place it downtown with acquisition and infrastructure, demolition, we had, that's what drove, that's what took a $46 million project up to 52 with a $5 million reserve, for a contingency, but it was really putting it downtown. So I think we were comparable, but for us, what drives it up is what we've got to do to put it downtown. I think, theoretically, and we gamble. I mean, this is one of those investments that might actually be the catalyst for additional investment that the hotel wasn't going to be in a meaningful way. The hotel's impact on the increase in countywide jobs was, I think, around 40, and most 40 jobs total, and that was when it reached its point of, being, I think, three years out, 3 years after operation. And so that's not really a catalyst. Those were going to be food and beverage jobs almost exclusively, but now with this idea that we can attract people to move, housing downtown hopefully will become more attractive, and then with that will become the ancillary services that would hopefully actually pick up residential living in downtown. I think that's the biggest issue. Is the lack of a pharmacy, the lack of a grocery store, the lack of a gas station without, getting in your car, basically.
With the amount of money we spent on the TIF money, on the med school and other things, is there enough TIF money left that if some really neat project came along downtown, we'd be able to take advantage of it, or are we kind of tapped out for a while?
I think we're tapped out. And not only are we tapped out, but I think we're banking on a certain percentage of growth within the TIF, which I do think will happen. I have a lot of faith in the London Winnie representative that has appeared before council to talk about how are we meeting our bond requirements. I think the key issue to making the TIF, to making the bond payment works, is the reduction in the hotel from the $38.5 million bond down to 20. Now, at a $20 million bond, the payment is a little over $1 million a year for 25 years, and at least for the next 10, we'll get $350,000 a year from the county. We only actually borrowed as the city 16.5, but we, for whatever reason, covered the county's portion. And so, at least for the first 10 years under the hotel bond, we should be able to cover that bond payment with the actual increase in the value of that property, coupled with the payment from the county, and that really made it doable. Because at that point, it's almost irrelevant to how we calculate what else the TIF can borrow. I mean, at the point it can almost cover, at least for a period of time, cover its own loan, and then with the medical school being in place, and if there is actually a catalyst of development, then obviously that, what we're getting in terms of property taxes will increase. Hopefully to the point where the actual increase in property taxes related to the hotel covers the actual bond payment.
When I introduced you, I talked about EarthCare, and you kind of got the credit, I think, deservedly so, for killing EarthCare. What happened on EarthCare, and where is that project today?
Well, with EarthCare, that was a project that must have started, right as Mayor Winnicke took office, because it came to us for bond, I think, in March of 2012. A company came to town that wanted, and where we came into play was, it was a $5 million loan out of the Evansville Bond Bank. Apparently, because I think the bond bank, this was an example where an issue went through 3 or 4 levels of government before it was determined that it was the inappropriate thing to do. So the first commission that voted on whether to loan this company $5 million was the bond bank. And then a committee of the bond bank later voted to advance them $200,000 of that loan. And then the remaining 4.8 came before City Council, and it wasn't just me. It became apparent to me, as well as there were several other, Councilman Friend, Councilman Adams, Councilman McGinn, that the company, not just the company, but the product there were a lot of things that didn't make sense. There was a claim of patents that didn't exist, exclusive right to distribute, exclusive right to manufacture. I think, we were poised to loan a company $5.5 million with the understanding that they were going to build a manufacturing facility here and hire over 100 employees at skilled trade wages, and it just wasn't true. But they did. It happened so quickly, which is, again, it's this issue of transparency and letting the public really understand what the decision is that government is making. We voted, I think, the beginning of March of 2012, and so in the matter of just a couple of months, within the approval went out, and then knowing that was the inappropriate thing to do, several of us did a tremendous amount of research to, I think, just make the administration ask a couple of questions that they finally asked, when that was, did this company really have the exclusive right to sell this machine, and did they have a right to manufacture it? And in getting the administration to ask those questions, they determined that this company did not.
Okay, as I understand, EarthCare is dead, but that first $200,000 in loan, are we ever going to get that back? I don't think so, and that is why the loan was extended, frankly, because now, if you extend the interest-only portion of the loan, apparently Mr. Haney agreed to actually pay that, which is about $300 a month. But had that committee not extended that interest-only payment, I think he had made it clear he wasn't going to make the payment, once it included principal. So the idea was that at least, and I don't know what choice they had. I think they operated under just too little information when they extended the loan, or when they made the initial But he's only
advance.
paying $300 a month on a $200,000 loan?
That's correct, and that will continue now through 2016, through the end of 2015. So we won't take up this issue again until after the next election.
Okay. McCurdy's been sitting down there by the riverfront vacant for years. Is that project going anywhere?
You know, that's really a question I don't know the answer to. I know it for all practical, for people who live and work around it, and the answer to that is they doubt it. But what I understood is that that the owner of the property was pursuing some kind of federally assisted loan, and then they had the ability maybe just to shift to some traditional financing, and that, you know, I would hope that even if it wasn't a property, or they weren't able to put together the investment money needed to work on it, I'm hoping that it becomes more interesting or more exciting to the developer, the owner, the developer, to start working on it now, you know, with the idea of students being down there. And I don't know, you know, the problem with that building is that to restore it to a hotel is cost prohibitive because of the requirements with it being on the historical registry. And then in converting to condos, may just be too expensive for the market.
You wonder if the numbers will ever work out.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's a wonderful location, and it looks like it has so much potential from the outside, but I understand it's very difficult to remodel, and to, you know, between the historical registry and the cost. You know, I don't know that though. I think it's hard. It's difficult to make those affordable.
You know, what I hope does not happen to the McCurdy, I'd love to see the building saved, but you know, with the old train station, they talked and talked and talked for years and years and years about what they're going to do to it, and eventually the building just got so rotten, finally they said we can't do anything, and now of course it's gone. If time is not on our side with
No, and
I've got to ask you one other thing. We're running out of time. I've got to ask you something on all the comments, like on the City County Observer. You've had a lot written about you the last couple weeks, obviously. A lot of it good, some not as good. But it seems like about every 10th or 15th comment says something like, Stephanie, you ought to run for mayor. One of them said, well, maybe we need a new person named Mayor Riley. You know, have you ever thought about that? How do you feel when people say that to you?
You know, the reason I came forward with the audio, and it's just like Earth Care, you know, I didn't intend to lead on that issue, but I got cornered in that it just appeared that no one else was going to step up to do it. And so, although I've always felt underprepared, you know, I'm certainly willing to do what I can for the city. I don't think that, I really don't think at this time I have any interest in running for mayor. That, you know, I don't think Lloyd Winnecke's a bad person. You know, I think he's an intelligent man. I think he delegates too much of his work and hasn't focused enough on making sure that our financial records are in order. But if all I really want is for the books to balance and for the public to know that their money's being kept track of. You know, I brought this forward because I didn't see it coming. I didn't get a call from anyone about what hit Thursday at 5:21 p.m. Had Lloyd Winnecke called me, had, you know, the president of council, you know, I would have had that press conference on Monday. I would have had it on Thursday, because I thought that there was a risk of an attempt to change the audit, and because I was concerned about 2013 and the limited time to make sure that that audit had a chance to be clean. And so,
well, certainly this little lady's got it, so nobody's going to stop talking about the audit until everything's out in the open. Stephanie, we really appreciate you being here. And to our viewers, we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This year in the Tri-State, 1 out of 8 people will be in an accident.
Would you know what to do?
Call Woods & Woods. They'll get you help.
When you call Woods & Woods, you are not a statistic. You are our client, and we will fight to get the money you deserve.
And that's what Mike did. He really fought hard for me. They just really cared.
If you've been injured, call 1-800-544-2108.
Let Woods & Woods work for you. You don't owe us a dime unless we win your case.
You're watching memorable entertainment television. MeTV TRI-STATE.